There's a stranger living your life, and you don't even know their name. They know your weaknesses. They know the one thing you'll do when you're scared, the exact lie you tell when you want to look good, the precise way you sabotage your tomorrow because you can't bear something about today. And the strangest part? They don't hate you. They think they're protecting you. They're your shadow. We like to believe change is a matter of effort. Work harder, try new habits, get motivated. But what if all your effort just feeds the thing you're trying to outrun? What if the diet, the detox, the resolution? What if every shining promise is bait for the thing inside you that you refuse to look at? We reinvent our routines, so we never have to reinvent ourselves. There's a secret pact you've made with your own darkness. Do not expose me, and I won't destroy you. And so we go on decorating the cage. Jung believed that the human being is not simply a creature of light, but a borderland where night and day negotiate a truce. The shadow isn't just a metaphor for evil. It is the sum of everything in you that is exiled. The impulses you learned were unacceptable, the grief you never cried, the anger that didn't get permission to live, the gifts that weren't rewarded. Throw anything into the basement long enough, fear, doubt, lust, ambition, tenderness, and it starts giving off a smell and grows teeth. It becomes the thing that speaks through you when you say, I don't know what came over me. It's not a possession. It's a neglected room in your own house. Imagine your psyche as a stage with 1,000 spotlights. The persona, the mask you wear when you want to be liked, stands in the center. Behind the curtains in the wings, you keep the things that dawn. Fit the costume. The version of you that wants more, the part that's still 12 years old and furious, the magician you were when you were 5 and believed everything was alive. We put them away because the audience booed, or because the director, your parents, your culture, your God said, not that. But they didn't die. They learned to wait for a power outage. This is why, when we try to change, the attempt fails. We don't sabotage ourselves because we're weak. We sabotage ourselves because the unacknowledged parts of us have a different plan. The shadow doesn't want you happy. It wants you whole. And if your happiness is a fragile structure built on denial, your psyche will burn it down to get your attention. So what do you do when the fire starts? You blame the world. You blame your job, your boss, your partner, your body, your parents, your past, your phone. You look everywhere but the one place where the arsonist keeps the matches, inside the single room you swore never to enter. And every time you refuse, the stranger smiles and says, fine, we'll try again next year. That's the hidden reason why you'll never change. Because change, the kind that lasts, isn't an upgrade. It's a reckoning. And a reckoning begins with a question. What part of me do I refuse to see? It's a strange feeling when you realize your reflection is not loyal. You smile, and it smiles back, but the timing is slightly off, like a glitch. That is what projection feels like, when the thing you hate in others is a disowned echo of yourself. Jung thought projection is how the shadow announces itself when you won't open the door. It knocks by dressing strangers in your sins. You meet a liar and feel righteous. You meet a coward and feel superior. You meet a seducer and feel disgusted. You're always the detective in the scene, never the suspect. But the room you're investigating is a mirror chamber. The clues point to you. We can follow this into a life. Take the quiet man who prides himself on never being angry. He calls himself peaceful. His friends call him patient. In truth, he has built a whole religion around never saying no. When someone crosses him, he laughs, he swallows, he writes it down in the secret ledger. He is a saint until one day he becomes a monster. Sharp words, the glass shattering on the kitchen floor, the look on his child's face. It wasn't me, he says to himself after. I don't know what came over me, but it was him. It was the portion of his life force that he smothered, the ancient mammal with the spine and teeth that knows how to protect a boundary. Years of pretending to be above that animal turned the animal into a ghost that knocks him over in the middle of dinner. His peace was a lie. His patience was a bargain with exile. Or take the woman who transforms herself into light, hyper-competent, helpful, never a burden. She is always present for others, never herself. She calls it compassion. Her nervous system calls it disappearing. What she despises most are selfish people, people who take up space. She reads their flaws like a psychic. They just love attention. She is correct. But inside, in the silent room where her voice is punished by her own eyes, there is a girl who knows exactly how to take up space. That girl is loud and audacious, and not always nice. If she showed up, the woman's carefully curated goodness would crack. So she hunts that girl in others, where she can punish her safely. She thinks she's a moral force. She's just projecting a stolen heirloom onto other people and trying to smash it. A society does this too. The witch trials weren't about witches. They were about a culture that couldn't handle the forces that had repressed female power, sexuality, nature's unruly patterns, illness without explanation. The witch became a canvas. Burn the canvas, and you pretend you've contained the storm. The storm, of course, goes back underground, where it rips up the foundations of the village in the form of hysteria, violence, rigidity. Every moral panic is this: a theater where we pretend the monster lives outside the town walls. The secret is, the walls were built within us. The shadow is not a theory. It's the way your body tightens when you hear a certain name. It's the sentence you cannot say without staring at the floor. It is the envy that tastes metallic in your mouth in the presence of someone who dared to do what you forbid yourself to want. It's the rage you feel at hypocrisy, which is really rage at your own. And it is also your gold, the talents you never admitted, the wildness you were told to leash, the curiosity you killed in exchange for belonging. We bury the worst of us and the best of us in the same pit. Change fails because we try to improve without admitting we're frightened. We try to perform a ritual of ascension while a voice in the cellar whispers, "You left me behind. You cannot climb without me." And so it pulls at your ankle. It increases the gravity around your plans. You call it laziness. It's grief. You call it procrastination. It's fear. You call it toxic. It's unlived life banging on the pipes to be let back in. When Jung wrote about the shadow, he didn't mean you should become a villain. He meant you should stop playing one by accident. He meant you should stop becoming the worst version of yourself in the name of goodness. One does not become enlightened, he observed, by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That sentence isn't poetry. It's a fuse. Turn on the basement light, and you find valuables among the cobwebs. Turn on the light, and the things that scuttle aren't demons but neglected messengers. They came to warn you. They came to return what you left at the border when you crossed into adulthood and called it maturity. And yet, the more we try to open the door, the more resistant the locks become. Why? Because your shadow doesn't trust you. You spent years calling it ugly, stupid, dangerous, unworthy. You locked it away whenever guests came. You used it as a scapegoat for your failures. It learned. It grew strong in the dark. It learned to hide behind your principles. It learned to drink your energy at night, so you would wake tired and accountable to nothing. It learned to mimic your voice until you couldn't tell the difference. If you want the door to open, you'll have to approach it like a wild animal, not a prisoner. You'll have to kneel. You will have to say what you then never said out loud. I'm afraid of you, and I need you. Here is the twist nobody wants. The shadow isn't only the beast, it is also the king. The part of you with the courage to be wholly alive doesn't glow. It smolders. It taps its foot in the basement and says, I'm not going anywhere until you stop pretending. And it is right, because pretending is the opposite of love. When you admire someone's boldness, it is often your shadow admiring itself. When you despise someone's shamelessness, it is often your shadow knocking on the ceiling with a broom. We love and hate what we are. That is projection's secret choreography, and it is how the self guides itself home. The point of recognizing your shadow is not to shame yourself into silence. It's to reclaim your energy from the war of denial. No more front lines. No more banner of purity. No more hiding your appetite behind diets of virtue. You are not here to be a statue. You're here to be a creature complicated, contradictory, capable of breaking and repairing, tempted and temperate, kind and sometimes not. Integration is not the triumph of the mask. It is the marriage of the mask with the face. Every myth worth keeping is a map of this descent. Theseus doesn't find the Minotaur by firing arrows from the city walls. He goes into the labyrinth, the coiled corridors of his own unconscious with a thread. He doesn't kill the beast to banish it. He kills it to end a ritual of denial that demanded yearly sacrifices of youth. The Minotaur is what you create when you feed the subterranean rather than face it. Inanna, the queen of heaven, descends to the underworld and is stripped at each gate of a symbol of power crown, beads, garment until she is naked before her sister, the queen of the dead. Only then can she return. The message is old and human and exact. The path up goes down. We avoid this descent because we are efficient. We want results. We want the quantified self, metrics, cold showers, morning routines, the rituals of light. Routines matter. But without the descent, they become religious objects used to appease a god we don't believe in. We perform, and the shadow laughs because it cannot be negotiated with through rituals of control. It respects sincerity and blood. So what does it actually look like, this making darkness conscious? It looks surprisingly ordinary. A person sits in a chair. The room is quiet. Their phone is turned off. They ask a dangerous question and do not look away. What am I pretending not to know? Then they wait. Maybe nothing comes. Maybe a small thing arrives first. Your dislike of a friend, your hunger for a different life, your wish to be forgiven without admitting guilt. You let the small thing sit. You do not argue with it. You offer it a glass of water. You say, talk. It talks. And the big things come. I hate my father for leaving. I hate my mother for staying. I hate that my body is different than the one I imagined. I hate the way I use people to avoid loneliness. I hate that I am tired of carrying everyone else. The words come like stones you've been hiding in your sleeves. You drop them one by one, and your hands begin to move. Dreams help, because the night doesn't argue with your daytime laws. The person you push away shows up at the threshold. The animal you dread follows you into a kitchen with no doors. The moon eats the sun and gives it back. In active imagination, a method Jung used, you don't interpret the dream first. You enter it. You talk to the figures. You say to the thief, "Why are you in my house?" He might answer, "Because you left the door open." You ask the storm, "What do you want?" It might answer, "To wet the earth that you've been salting with your fear." You do not bully the images into meaning. You invite them to teach you meaning from the inside. And in ordinary daylight, you watch your projections like a detective who finally realizes he's been chasing himself. Notice who makes you furious and why. Notice the compliments you cannot accept and set them down in front of you like gifts from a stranger. Notice who makes you feel smaller and ask yourself whether they are shrinking you or you are shrinking yourself to fit your old costume. You practice a new reflex. Every strong reaction is a letter from the basement. Before you mail it back, read it. Here is the most disorienting revelation. The shadow is often made from your gifts. You are too brilliant for someone. Your ideas embarrassed a parent. Your curiosity was inconvenient. Your sensuality scared a teacher. Your playfulness didn't match the family mood. The pack needed you to be quiet, controllable, predictable. And because children will do anything to stay in the pack, You hid your fire in the ash and called it humility. You were rewarded. You were easy. And now, as an adult, your soul refuses to accept the reward. The cost is too high. Anxiety is the bill arriving in your inbox every morning. Depression is the ground refusing to hold your feet while you try to walk in a role too small. The cure isn't always to add things. Sometimes it is to release the masks you've kept polished for a party that is over. Individuation, the process Jung described of becoming who you are, not who you were trained to be, isn't a spa day. It's a pilgrimage with poor lighting, but it gives gifts that nothing else can. When the shadow becomes visible, energy returns. You stop arguing with reality. You develop humor about your flaws because they aren't traps anymore. They're terrains. You discover limits and set them without apology because you aren't trying to be loved for your usefulness. You feel anger cleanly because you don't use it like a smokescreen to hide your fear. You forgive not because you're noble, but because you're done feeding the minotaur your youth. There is a moment, if you stay long enough with the darkness, when the shape of it changes. At first, it is a trap cold, heavy, concrete room. Then it is a landscape hills at night, the smell of rain, the sound of insects reminding you that life never stops because you cannot see it. Finally, it is a womb warm, pulsating, quiet with heartbeat. You start to recognize that the thing you called your enemy is a guardian at the threshold. And guardians are not defeated. They are honored and then stepped past. But before that, there is the grief. Nobody tells you how much grief lives in the shadow. The grief of the years you didn't live. The grief of the words you didn't say. The grief of the person you pretended to be. The grief of the love you withheld from yourself until someone else would hand it to you with a certificate. You sit in that grief like a small boat in a dark lake and think you will never see the shore. Then quietly, the oars appear, not promises, not solutions, just two handles to hold while you row. There is also rage, true and clean, that arrives like a guest you've always known. It's not the tantrum to avoid the truth. It's the fire that says no more. No to being the family's emotional landfill. No to making yourself smaller so that other people can avoid their fears. No to agreeing to a life that looks good and feels like a sealed room. This rage is not a wildfire. It's a hearth. You can warm your life around it. And then, unexpectedly, there is tenderness. You realize that the shadow you feared was a younger you, frozen at the door where you left them because you were out of options. You go back and find them still holding that impossible bag. Don't be loud. Don't be dumb. Don't be needy. Don't be weak. Don't be too much waiting for you to return. How long have they been standing there? Time doesn't move in those corridors. It has been a minute and a century. You take the bag from their hands and say, you don't have to hold this anymore. Your nervous system registers a new possibility, one it cannot understand yet, kindness toward the parts of you you've crucified. This is not sentimental, it is architectural. You cannot build a life on hatred of yourself and expect it to stand. You cannot keep a persona polished like a helmet and complain that you can feel the rain. The human heart is not a machine calibrated for perfection. It is a room with windows on all sides, and the weather is allowed in. If you bar the north wind, you bar the stars. We think fate is something that happens to us. Often, fate is the shadow repeating itself through us. The same story with new actors. The same ending with different excuses. You pick partners who replay the original wound because your soul wants the ending to change. You pick careers that mirror your father's fear because it is the only language you know. You attack people who mirror your disowned qualities so you can keep from recognizing them. Without consciousness, we become scripts. With consciousness, the script becomes a page we can write on. Nations do this too. The ghosts of history are not metaphors. They are patterns that move through families and laws and school books. A country that refuses to face its violence will invent new words for the same behavior. and call it progress. A culture that cannot face its greed will turn accumulation into a virtue and call it freedom. But cracks appear. Children ask questions. Stories get told that were once illegal. The shadow leaks under the door until someone has the courage to open it and switch on the light. Apologies are not enough. Changing the rituals of daily life is how a people integrates its shadow, teaching the missing history, feeding what was starved, giving voice to what was forbidden. The same is true in you. To face the shadow is to step out of innocence. Innocence is not purity. It's ignorance that passes as virtue. You don't need it. You need integrity, knowing what lives inside you and holding it with responsibility. That kind of self-knowledge is not narcissism. It's a civic duty in the republic of your relationships. People can trust you when you know your wolf. You're dangerous without it, because your wolf will still come out, just at night, hungry, surprised, injuring what you love. There is a quiet ecstasy that follows the grief, a sense of returned weather. You notice you're less afraid of other people's eyes. You notice you're less enthralled by your own hero story. You notice you can say, "I was wrong," without crumbling, because being wrong no longer endangers your place in the tribe. The tribe is now partly inside you, held in your arms like a child you rescued from a house you set on fire. The strangest thing is that your desires get simpler and more honest. You want what you actually want. You rest when you're tired. You work when you're moved. You love because you can, not to feed the emptiness you used to arrange your life around. No one will hand you a medal for this. People may not even notice. But your life will start making a different sound, like a bell that was cracked and is now whole. The note is deeper. It carries farther. The world doesn't change, not all at once. But you move through it differently, and that difference alters your fate in ways only hindsight will make obvious. The people who could only love you for your mask drift. The people who love your face draw close. If you stay, if you keep descending and returning, something ancient in you will stand up, stretch, and look around. Oh, it will say, "We are home." There is a moment near dawn when the horizon doesn't glow yet, but the dark has softened. Owls are still out. The first bird is awake. The city takes a breath. You can feel, with a kind of animal accuracy, that something is about to change. That moment is where most lives stall, standing on the edge of integration, tasting it, then going back to sleep. It's understandable. Daylight is a promise and a terror. Once you see, you cannot unsee. You will be tempted to make the shadow a project. You will want to schedule it, optimize it, turn it into a productivity hack. Don't. Treat it like weather and wilderness, like visiting a grave. Bring offerings, time, attention, honesty. Let it deform your plans and inform your plans. Let it slow you down. Your relationships will change. Your work will change. Your performance will not always go up. Sometimes it will drop because you're no longer fueled by panic. Don't mistake withdrawal of panic for loss of purpose. There is a life that moves without being chased. You will lose some illusions. Good. Illusions are expensive, and you have paid enough. You'll also lose some shields. People who liked you mute will be bewildered. People who liked you monstrous will be disappointed. That is the cost of leaving the theater of projections. You cannot control the roles other people wrote for you. You can only step out of costume and bow to the empty seats and exit through the stage door into air that smells like the first hour of the world. Beware of the glamour of the shadow, too. Once you befriend your darkness, it can seduce you into believing you are deeper than others, because you have suffered. You are not deeper, you are simply more honest about your climate. Do not build a throne out of your wounds. Build a table. Sit with others. Listen to how their shadows move. Trade maps. Trade bread. Laugh at your shared pretensions. Make your life a place where shame has nothing to eat. You might be wondering what to do next. Nothing mystical. Start small and real. Every time you judge, pause and ask, what does this say about me? Every time you admire, ask, where does this live in me? Every time you feel a surge of self-righteousness, sit down. Do not stand on that wave to survey the world and declare verdicts. It will throw you. Say instead, I am human. I have a wolf. I have a lamb. I am not here to pretend I'm only one of them. Write, not performatively, not for social proof. For truth, put on paper the sentence you least want to write. The door will open a little wider with each unflattering line. Ask for help if you can. Find a therapist, a mentor, a ritual, a friend who knows how to sit in silence without tiding your feelings with aphorisms. Build a practice of returning to the room you used to avoid 5 minutes a day, if that is all you can stand. It doesn't have to be dramatic. The shadow doesn't need spectacle. It wants sincerity. Think of your life as a house. You have kept some rooms locked for years. The keys are in your pocket. The longer you wait, the more unfamiliar the rooms will feel when you finally open them. That's fine. Unfamiliarity is not danger. It is simply the body of the past becoming visible. You are allowed to repaint. You are allowed to throw away the furniture. You are not allowed to pretend the rooms don't exist, not if you want to live somewhere real. Jung did not ask us to worship the darkness. He asked us to be undeceived. The shadow is not a god. It is a fact. It will live in you whether you face it or not. If you refuse, it will run your life in ways you will call fate. If you face it, it will still run through you, but now as a river within its banks, not a flood. The difference between a life that repeats and a life that unfolds is whether you can sit at the mouth of that river and drink. There is a last image I want to leave you with. A small child is standing at the edge of a forest at dusk. They are afraid. Behind them is a village of warm windows and dinner smells and expectations. Ahead is the dark with its glittering animal eyes. Someone you trust stands beside you, the future you who has done this. They do not promise it will be easy. They do not hand you armor. They take your hand and say, it's time, and you step forward. You will never change until you face your shadow, because the thing you are calling change is often the shadow's camouflage. Turn around. Look. Name what you see. Let it speak. Let it weep. Let it rage. Let it guide you out and down, and then, when it's ready and you're ready, let it guide you home. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to Boring History, because the truth is never boring.